Shabbat Shalom. A few weeks ago, my 5-year-old son, Adir, asked my wife, Rachel, well, which comes first, getting married or getting a job? But does it happen at the same time? So it made me laugh to hear this. But I thought, I have to think a little bit about answering that question. And you could see that his mind was really working there, which is okay. When you become a big person and you do all those things that adults do, then big changes happen. And you could already tell there's a moment where everything suddenly changes. Or maybe he just knew that Rachel and I got married and came here to the synagogue 2 days later. It's a good question. And it really is like this. Life is organized in these different cycles and different periods. And each one is so very different. Each one, it's incredible. Each one just brings completely different occupations and preoccupations and focuses where we put our hearts and minds and souls. And there's a wisdom about embodying every different one of these periods and cycles that each one of us ends up going through. Becoming an empty nester, becoming a grandparent, but also understanding how each one is different. Last month, my sister-in-law, my brother's wife, gave birth to 2 identical twins. And there is a change. I'm not sure they know what's about to hit them. But when we think about it, before we have children, when we're just focused on our own lives and developing our personalities and careers, then that's where our hearts and minds are. And suddenly we're raising a family and learning how to be productive members of society and joining a community, and learning to balance our own needs with the needs of everyone else suddenly in our lives. And then becoming an empty nester, refocusing what our life is about, refining a new place of living with our spouse or as an individual, thinking about the greater questions of life, what it's all about. Every one of those is a world in itself. And for all the different stages, so for Adir, a little person who keeps looking up at all of his babysitters graduating and going to college and going off to dorms and thinking how they're moving out of their house, going into a new house, and then knowing that eventually they come back and start their own house, and so on and so on. We have to honor each stage, and for every time, for every season, as we say. So our parsha this week talks about the Levites, the priests who used to run the temple worship. And there's a very curious detail about the Levites and the census that begins the parasha and how they're counted. So it says in the Torah, God said to Moses, take a census of the Gershonites also by their ancestral house and by their clans, record them from the age of 30 years up to the age of 50, all who are subject to service, the performance of tasks for the tent of meeting. And all the other clans of the Levites, same, 30 to 50 years. But just last week, when we were counting every single Israelite male, it wasn't 30 years up that we were counting them from, it was much younger. So why are we suddenly counting the Levites at 30 years old? In those days, 30 was quite old. So why 30? So the commentators explain the previous census was about military age. When you're 20 years old, then you were ready to become a military person. You were in your physical prime. You were ready you had the skills to battle and so on. And they were ready to take it on. But the Levites, it was a different paradigm, a different duty. And some of the commentators say, well, their preparation began before they were 30. There's another number in the Torah that says 25. And so 25 to 30, they would do some of the singing that the Levites would do in the tabernacle. They would do some of the lighter duties. And even before that, they were teachers. In my mind, I thought perhaps they were teaching to the youngest Israelites, the equivalent of religious school. But the Levites, before they were 30 years old, they were not ready to really do what Levites did, the sacrificial cult. And as they were all about to set off into the wilderness, they were not ready to take on the responsibility of carrying the holy components of the tabernacle and to be true vehicles for divinity and for holiness, and to embody the tradition. And they had to undergo years of growth to become fuller human beings before they were ready to do all of that. And what was their job? Their job was to uplift the community, to do the service in their beautiful flowing white robes with the bells as were taught that were at the end of them, and to inspire and uplift and bring solace and comfort and healing to the people, to be heart, mind, and soul, to help take the sacrifices of others and raise them up to be an accepted sacrifice to God. And so they needed to have done some earlier work. They needed some experience of life. They needed to be ready to do all of that. They needed to be present and mature. And they needed the spiritual strength and power to do all of those tasks. And then those intensive years to the community were from 30 to 50. And then at 50 years old, it shifted again. They took on lighter duties. And their focus is on their own relationships with the Almighty and training others and finding peace and wholeness within themselves and before they were gathered to their people. And so there are different periods of life when parts of who we are need a different focus and in different ways. As the Mishnah recalls, is 1500 years after the Torah and teaches, as we often quote, the 5 years of age to study a scripture, at 10 the study of Mishnah, at 13 subject to the commandments, at 15 the study of Talmud, at 18 the bridal canopy, at 20 for pursuit of livelihood, at 30 the peak of strength, at 40 wisdom, at 50 able to give counsel, at 60 old age, at 70 fullness of years, at 80 the age of real strength, and so on. So each period and all of these transitions that we all go through in life, they require energy and they require some inner reordering of who we are and how we live things, and to explore in new directions and to find the space to go through it properly. Because we teach all of life as a school, and every act, every stage, we have to grow and add as we go through the journey of our souls in this world. Growing up, becoming a personality, developing a career, finding a spouse, raising a family, learning to be part of a community and contributing to it, watching our kids grow up and themselves meet spouses and take on their individual separate lives and families, growing older, finding other places to put our energy, learning to live with a new and different wind, finding peace and wholeness, sharing wisdom as elders. Now, our tradition's wisdom through all of it is to see and to be aware and to do our best to embody all of the roles that we were given and the tasks that we play, and to see them as opportunities to live more fully and to learn to love more fully and better, and to understand our own selves more profoundly, and to see all of our relationships in new lives, whether it's as spouses when our children leave the home, or with our own children as they build families of their own. And at times, some of the lessons take us back to an earlier place where we were many years before, and how we developed our own selves from before children to after children. But even as we keep a little of each stage through all of it, a little of the vitality and humor of each part of it, keep a little of our teenage spirit. And as we go through each one, we have internal work to do and external work to do, giving to the community, to our people, to the economy, to our nation, our own little tiny piece of humanity, as we play what is really a great theater of life. So I laughed when Adir asked, well, does it happen at the same time? Do you get a job and you get married? I thought he's far too young to be thinking about that. He's only 5 years old. But yet his mind is already thinking about the next stage, as all of our minds always are. Trying to learn and grow and find peace, to find wholeness and find joy. Shabbat Shalom.